Word to the Wise. We are an explicit podcast tackling content with adult themes, as well as, well, there aren't any spoilers here actually at all. Okay. Hey there, this is Cross.
I'm gonna ramble and stutter and not know what to say. I'm PJ. Hi.
And we are Words and Whiskey, a podcast for veteran and novice readers alike. We tackle fiction novels and love to talk about what we're drinking. You should think of us as your new intoxicating weekly book club.
There's probably new people listening to this right now, so they don't understand that was kind of a joke up top. Usually we give a spoiler warning for how far we've read within a series or a book, but this is episode 0, so we haven't read into... We're not talking about any details of any book yet. So, welcome new listeners, if there are any.
No details on no books, nothing crazy. This is meant to be fully approachable. Just to give you an idea of, what we're going to be tackling, kind of some of our thought processes behind it, some asks, and maybe give you a quick idea of, like what the show is and what to expect from this upcoming season. Yeah, maybe. Who we are. So, a little bit of that, maybe. A little bit. But today is the 0th episode where we're going to be talking about what PJ thinks of The First Law by Joe Abercrombie is and or could be, and where we'll chat about some large concepts about Joe, give ourselves a little bit of an introduction and whatnot. But before we get into any of the rough content, the first thing we want to do, or the content of the episode, first thing we want to do is talk about the featured drinks that we're having. PJ, what are you having today?
I just opened a beer called Luxurious Llama by Lupulin Brewing Company. It's a local Minnesota brewery. It's not very far from where I live. They're very, very, very good.
I am having a Southern Tier Brewing Co. double IPA, but PJ, we have an ask for listeners.
Yes, if you would like to see anything come to life in drink form on this show, if you could submit drink names to us, I would love to take those names and turn them into cocktails. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Where should they reach out, Crossland? You know more about social media.
Okay. You could reach out to us on Blue Sky. You could reach out to us on Instagram or Threads. Otherwise, you can very occasionally find us on Twitter. I am not frequently on, but I do go and check maybe once a week or so. More frequently, though, I check our email pretty constantly. So give us an email at wordsandwhiskeyshow@gmail.com and we'll give a check there. Any ideas that you have, send them in, and we would love to craft custom cocktails based on your name. So for people of whom are new to Words and Whiskey, just so you're aware, we're going to be tackling this whole series over the course of the next year and change. The only reason I say that is we're going to have a couple of brief interruptions that are kind of planned as a part of sort of the journey through the standalone trilogy, the Great Leveler trilogy, as it were, that will potentially break it up a little bit. And before we get to Age of Madness. So we plan on tackling all 9 books and the Sharp End short story collection, but there will be a couple of other inserts in between. So PJ, for anyone new to the show, is generally speaking new to the story that we're approaching. I think at this point you just counted, you've read 30 books since we've started the show. So I think it's a little tough to call you a brand new reader anymore, but you're new to the story. And so you're reading it completely fresh week to week. Meanwhile, I have read all of these. In the case of The First Law, I've read them multiple times. It remains one of my favorite series of all time. I'm very excited for us to tackle this one, including a number of my favorite entries. My second favorite book ever / my favorite book that I've read in my adult life is from this series. So I'm
looking forward to it. Yeah. So I am very aggressively on Team No Hype, as we call it. 0 spoilers, 0 information about the story. I know nothing about this story going into it, and I am very excited to learn about it as we go. I think some people enjoy kind of reliving stories vicariously through me for that reason, because I am a purist in that sense, and I hope that maintains throughout this series.
Yeah, and hopefully the other side of that is that we can bring some insight into analyzing the actual text and sort of the nature of especially Abercrombie's very eloquent writing and character writing and stylings and things like that. So we'll get into a number of those small nuances and character details and favorite quotes and passages and all sorts of things as we break down kind of the story on a week-to-week basis. Our show tends to be a little bit longer on average. We usually record about 2 to 2.5 hour episodes. They're longer, they're meatier, they're beefier to get to a lot of the components and make sure that we don't miss anything critical. I also don't want to lead PJ down a path of assuming that something is really important by pointing it out. So some of that ends up being, not misleading by any means, but ensuring that I'm not leading him either.
Right. To anyone also new to the story, but not new to Words and Whiskey, if you've come with us from Red Rising or from Mistborn and are embarking on the First Law with me as a new reader, I'm very excited to share this experience with you. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, We've got a couple of patrons that are reading along for the first time, which is very exciting. And then in addition, for those of you of whom are following along, you can find our schedule at wordsandwhiskey.show/schedule. At that point, you'll be able to see all of the different episode numbers, specifically the chapters that you're looking at on a week-to-week basis, and what exactly that looks like on our website. This is a trickier one. These books are trickier than previous novels that we've read in the fact that there aren't numbers to follow and there are only subtitles. And so we are led basically by the subtitles being the numbers. So keep in mind that each of these are reading through that chapter. So for instance, our first week is the end through the good man. And so that is the intended reading. You finish the good man and you stop before the next chapter.
If we ever talk about page numbers, it'll be in the box set paperback editions of the books. So if you have hardcovers, which I think Crossland is working off of, so we might be able to give both. The first section, I think, is through page 104 or something like that in the paperback edition.
That's a great point. I can totally update these with paperback numbers. I haven't done that for a while just because we had different versions of the Mistborn Era 2 books, but I can totally do that. So I will do that. I'll update those with page number counts between them. But yeah, they will be driven, for the sake of everyone listening, by the paperback mass market, not mass market, the trade paperback edition, which is the box set edition, the red, blue, gold with the sort of Kurosawa inspired edging on them all. The sort of streaks of blood. That said,
how
PJ,
often we'll talk about page numbers, but if we do, that's
probably not
what they're going to be.
But you'll be able to see them on the website at the very least if you need another sort of range to stop yourself. So that'll be right there and available. With that, the plan for the season is vaguely to run through as 6 episodes to cover each of the books. So this is going to be a little bit faster than our traditional seasons. Our hope is our plan is to cover them as in depth in the same amount of time and do more pages all at once. So I am confident in our capability of doing that.
All right, cool. Sounds
our
good.
40-minute tier list did go 2 hours on accident. So
we're gonna record a bunch of 5-hour episodes, I'm sure.
And then we're gonna cut them in half. Because publishing long podcasts is difficult. That's literally true. From a size perspective.
Yeah, from an upload perspective, it's kind of
you can only upload 150 megabytes as a podcast, and we're already at 112 a week. We can't do much more. We can't do much more without compressing ourselves. Okay. Anyway, that's a lot of background on exactly what we are, what we're doing, how we're approaching this, and sort of the sort of framing with which we're going to be viewing these things. So I wanted to kick it off. PJ, at this point, I just want to point out that you're not completely blind going into this one, because comparatively, I did give you a choice. And as a part of that choice, I did let you read. We listened together to a chunk of chapters, not quite this full first chunk that we're reading here. So from here on out, I'm going to say brief spoilers for our first week's reading on the Blade itself.
I don't think
small. We're not going to talk literal details.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any details, but
for full no hypers, if you want to know absolutely nothing, you're good to shut off right now. If you're okay with a little bit of vagary that PJ already has a little bit of background in, we're going to talk just a smidge about some things.
Okay. There we go.
That's the plan. So with that, I'm going to read here our synopsis of the blade itself here to set us up. So, Logan Nine Fingers, infamous barbarian, has run out of luck. Caught in one feud too many, he's on the verge of becoming a dead barbarian, leaving nothing behind him but bad songs, dead friends, and a lot of happy enemies. Nobleman Captain Giselle Dan Luthar, dashing officer and paragon of selfishness, has nothing more dangerous in mind than fleecing his friends at cards and dreaming of glory in the fencing circle. But war is brewing, and on the battlefields of the frozen north, they fight by altogether bloodier rules. Inquisitor Glocta, crippled turned torturer, would like nothing better than to see Giselle come home in a box. But then Glocta hates everyone. Cutting treason out of the Union, one confession at a time, leaves little room for friendship. His latest trail of corpses may lead him right to the rotten heart of government, if he can stay alive long enough to follow it. Enter the wizard Baez. A bald old man with a terrible temper and a pathetic assistant. He could be the first of the Magi. He could be a spectacular fraud, but whatever he is, he's about to make the lives of Logan, Giselle, and Glocta a whole lot more difficult. Murderous conspiracies rise to the surface. Old scores are ready to be settled, and the line between hero and villain is sharp enough to draw blood.
It's pretty compelling. Sounds pretty great.
It's a pretty good summary.
In my very little experience, so for the sake of clarity, on our way to my wedding, which was a 5-hour drive, Crossland and I listened to the first couple chapters of both The Blade itself and the first Dark Tower book.
Yep, The Gunslinger.
The Gunslinger. Just to decide together which one to tackle next. And funny story, we landed on The Gunslinger and then landed on Blade itself after further contemplation. In the amount of story that I've been exposed to, I had no idea what the general genre of this story would be. We had exposure to flatheads, but we didn't get any exposure to anything truly magical. So I had questions on whether or not it would be... I figured fantasy would be the right term for it, but I didn't know if it would be something low magic or no magic fantasy or something a little bit higher magic. Unsure at this point with the existence of the wizard Baez. I'm guessing a little bit of magic is probably going to be involved, but yeah, I am still quite in the dark as far as the extent of that goes.
Yeah, and I just for full clarity, the reason that we did it this way, to the point, was selection, definitely between the two of us. But the other side of that was the reason that we listened to as much as we did was because I wanted you to get each POV in this case. So in the case of The Blade itself, I wanted you to have each and every one of the point of view characters kind of underneath your belt in a vague understanding. We literally skipped, incidentally, in our reading order, we did skip the introduction of Baez, but that's because he's not POV. So I really wanted you to listen and get a feel for Logan and Giselle and Glocta predominantly, as far as your opinions on them as that goes. So yeah, and part of the reason that I decided to settle on this is because of our ability to split this series up well with the impending eventual release of Red God, of which we will return to Red Rising for, take a break from the First Law world at that point, and then, come back. Basically, my imagination with the estimated release schedule in a conservative, or rather a liberal amount of time for Pierce Brown to finish that book in what our group's estimations are among fans and friends, I imagine we will round out and finish The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie, and right around then we'll be close to knowing precisely, and either we will start Red Country and then go in after Red Country, or we'll go into the book and go into Red God. So Red Country is an Abercrombie book.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I was going to question you on that.
Yeah. Red Country and Red God. So that's part of the reason that I ultimately decided that, because I would not feel good splitting up the Dark Tower. And so that was
the Dark Tower is big Crossland's baby. It's
my favorite book series of all time. This is my second favorite, though. So like, this is also kind of baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the whole, all 9 books, including all 9 books, it is my second favorite series. So there are trilogies that I think are better than individual trilogies, but as far as like a whole thing goes, holy shit, man. So I'm very excited to be starting this journey. And I'm curious about your expectation for these characters. You've had initial setup, which is basically an expounded version of this summary. So not a whole lot more than that, but I'm curious about thoughts that you might have about the characters as it pertains to where you potentially see them going or not going, or, just some like general initial reads, because you had a little bit of space with them.
I've had a little bit of space. I've had a very little bit of space, Crossland. I've had so little.
Yeah, you've had like a chapter piece. That's why I think it's good. Like, generally, I ask you to make a prediction just on these summaries, right?
Yeah.
You've got like a little bit of an idea of who they are with a little bit of perspective, but not everything as of yet. Start where you like.
So, Logan, Nine Fingers, feels like our primary protagonist at this point, whereas Glocta feels like our, maybe not an antagonist necessarily, but a third party kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know. He doesn't feel like someone that we're going to end up rooting for in any way. And maybe I feel that way because I hate the government and he works for it.
Kind of, yeah. He works for it and is inspecting, as the chapter that you're in, basically cites, right?
Yeah.
And the summary.
True. But I fully recognize that my personal biases are entirely bleeding into my read on whether or not this is a protagonist for us.
Sure.
So we listened to a little selection during that car ride, and then I've started reading briefly. I do not really remember anything about Giselle, if we got that far.
We did. We listened to. We definitely listened to the Giselle
chapter. I'm sure I'll remember it when I get there, but I don't remember any specifics about them at this point.
Yeah. So Giselle, in particular, he is a, without getting into it too much, his like initial scene and setup is him like swindling his friends out of money, playing cards, and he's evaluating the rest of his friends and sort of their noble status.
Yep.
Yeah. I saw the sigh and realization of who the fuck that was all in one moment.
Yeah.
Which told me a whole story.
Well, we were listening to this part when we turned off in the middle of nowhere and had to find a gas station.
Yes.
in bumfuck nowhere, Wisconsin. So I was more concerned about whether or not we could fill up properly, because the first gas station we got to was entirely shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was non-operational.
So I was a little stressed out. So
you also, if you don't have a read, you don't have to have a read.
I don't remember specifics well enough.
Sure.
This was
A-okay.
I was also thinking about getting married in like a couple days.
Right.
So
I'm just saying, this is a unique circumstance where you have a little bit of an impression. So yeah, I'm excited to read this series as well. The one, this is outside of the realm of something that I would normally present inside of these things, but I do want to give it to you kind of straight. This series was written in the same way that The Lord of the Rings was written. This is all one book. It's just broken up into 3.
Okay.
And I generally don't give that sort of like level clarity until we're like through a thing fully. But I really think that it's one of those components that for most people, when I'm pitching this or recommending it, it's like, just so you know, the Blade itself is like the Fellowship, like it's a setup. And that means that, like, you know, and that's good. You know, I'm not saying it is literally the Fellowship, but it is like a setup. And there are great components there. There's obviously climaxes, things happen inside of the story, but, you know, it's intended fully as a trilogy from the beginning. This was always 3 books, this story, all intentional.
Gotcha.
Just so you know.
Totally appreciate that heads up.
Yeah.
But I'm committed to reading all of them anyway. Well, so
yeah. I know. It's like one of those things where it's like, in estimation, I think maybe it's just because I had someone react who I had made the recommendation to on behalf of the show and whatever else. And they sent me messages in there. I'm like, this is one of your favorite book series of all time. And I went, yeah, just keep fucking going, dude. Like, just, and then by the end, they're like, yeah, I get it. And I was like, God damn it. Like, don't question me. But yeah, there's a couple of those. But yeah, for me, it's just like the one sort of quasi extra textual thing that I add here is that a little bit of background on Joe Abercrombie. Joe spent his time before writing as a film editor originally. And so kind of comes from that world of things. He edited a number of documentaries, music videos, and a couple of feature films, and was kind of writing on the side, having fun, playing around with sort of like his like D&D characters that he had in his head. And, you know, not that this is D&D inspired or anything like that, but sort of like the memes of characters and character types as they literally apply. And came out with this story.
Films or music videos that I'd be familiar with?
There's a couple of documentaries that I recognize that you might have actually seen because your dad loves rock band music documentaries.
That's true. I watched a lot of them growing up with him.
Yeah. I wonder. Tough to find easily. I'll look them up, though, and we can talk about them at a later date, and I'll add a little bit more
good.
there.
No worries.
But I would add in, there are two other like kind of interesting notes that I would add here. One, Gillian Redfern, of whom I've talked about before, is the editor for Joe Abercrombie, has been for a long time. She edited The Lost Metal, which is why, you know, I think that book is a step above. I also found out she edits all of the UK versions of Sanderson's books as well. Mm-hmm. So gives those like a language polish generally.
I remember you talking about that when we were talking about The Lost Metal. What is
also contributes edits. Go ahead.
What is the nationality or sort of background of Joe Abercrombie?
Okay. Great question. He's from England. He's very English. He's brutally an Englishman.
Brutally English.
which is great. Brutally a British man. Born in Lancaster. I want to say he lives in Bath is where he lives.
Okay.
Bath, England.
You know, if I really thought about it more, maybe Abercrombie would have made sense as an English thing. But like, I had no idea what sort of background that last name comes from.
Yeah, Bath is like just outside of Bristol on like the western side of the UK. So not that I like straight up knew that. I definitely Googled it to search to give you an idea, but I did know that he was from Bath.
I don't know what part of the country London is.
Oh, another thing that I'm very excited for within the First Law universe as it's upcoming is the adaptation of Best Served Cold, of which I have since already said on this show is my favorite novel that I've read in my adult life, of which is being the first book that is being adapted in this entire series. It is book number 4, which is interesting, but makes sense because it's a standalone story as opposed to adapting a trilogy right off the bat. So, because the First Law books would make a better like mini series per book, or single season of television, and Best Served Cold. Really, I'm very interested to see it. I imagine it as 2 movies. Joe's writing it himself as a as the screenwriter and the film editor on the whole thing, or not film editor, but as a film editor with experience and everything else. I'm very excited for what that looks like and what it shapes up to be, with the original director of Deadpool directing it, which is pitch perfect. So I'm very excited for how that whole thing shapes up. I'm trying to think of other things with Abercrombie that I wanted to bring up. Yeah, I'm just very excited. Obviously, you've read it. One of the first things you said is you did not expect it to be this funny. by read it, I mean you've read a couple of chapters, and we were both laughing out loud together, listening, which is just it's so fun. Very excited. Stephen Pacey, who does the audiobooks, is wonderful. Highly recommend them to anyone of whom hasn't listened to them and likes audiobooks. They're great. And yeah, I feel like that hits most of the bullet points that I wanted to make sure that we got out inside of this episode. So
until reading, I genuinely, legitimately thought Glockta's name was Glockter, like Glock Doctor.
Can't believe it.
That's just me. I don't know. I thought that was a very, very funny name. Glockta is still a funny name, just in the way that it sounds, but it's not Glock Doctor funny. So there's that. I don't know what else to bring up.
Perfect. I think that's fine. It's an intro episode, right?
Yeah.
So you guys have an idea of what's going on. This trilogy, again, originally published back in 2006 or 2005.
When did you first read this book? Or this series?
I first read this series for the first time in 2020.
Really? Okay.
This is not long on my list, but it is high on my list, if that makes sense. And it has not shifted despite reading a number of my favorite books ever since then. But yeah, this is, I mean, obviously we've covered Pierce Brown, and Pierce Brown is hugely inspired by Joe Abercrombie. He cites the book The Heroes as one of the greatest inspirations to the entirety of the Red Rising series, including especially Dark Age. So like the people that we've read, one way or another, have been influenced by Abercrombie. Matter of fact, I was going to bring this up earlier. One thing that we have consumed together from Joe Abercrombie is one of his Love, Death, Robots skits, which is the rat one about the war with the rats, which was a Joe Abercrombie special.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I fucking love Death and Robots.
Yeah.
It's such a man.
Yeah, great. And yeah, he did that. So that was technically your first taste of Joe Abercrombie.
Okay.
Which is fun in a, short story novella kind of way. So similar kind of conceit.
And speaking of Dark Age, and the fact that we just ranked all of our favorite books from what we've read so far on the show, Dark Age is my favorite of anything that Pierce Brown has ever written. So if that's inspired heavily by Joe Abercrombie, I'm very, very excited to get into this series.
It's gonna be fun. We're gonna have some fun times. We're gonna have some bad times, but it's mostly gonna be all right.
All right, so,
cool. I did want to read this little line about Abercrombie, kind of round it out. So he began writing the series in 2002, completing the whole thing, the trilogy, in 2004. It took a year of rejection by publishing agencies before Gillian Redfern of Gollancz accepted the book for a 5-figure deal in 2005. He replies and talks about this moment, saying, in everything sense, it was a 7-figure deal if you counted the pence columns of his check. Which it just tells you so much about it.
Fucking funny.
About Joe.
That's really funny.
Yeah. Very excited, though. We've got a suite of great guests that are going to be coming on for... Actually, I have most of them booked out for the entirety of the series. I think I've got 2 open that I want to book yet, but I've had people of whom have been kind of waiting for us to cover this to do rereads. So it's kind of been an interesting thing with a couple of popular YouTubers that I'm very excited to have on the line. So
nice.
It'll be very fun.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very excited. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to this little introduction episode here of Words and Whiskey, talking about the First Law trilogy. We're very excited for the future. With that, the chapters that you're going to be reading for next week, just to repeat myself again from what I was talking about before, is The End Through the Good Man. The End Through the Good Man.
Including the Good Man.
Yes, through.
Right? But
yeah. Yeah.
There's been confusion in that in the past.
Mostly my confusion. So most people got it the other way. The final thing that I wanted to throw in here is if you are a brand new reader, we would love to hear from you. If you're reading along with the series with us for the first time or what have you, Let us know, shoot us an email, send us a comment. You can leave one if you're listening on Spotify directly in the application as well. Just let us know that you're a new reader and that you're following along. It's always fun to know that other people are experiencing it with us. So
yeah, genuinely, like when we started this podcast, I really, really thought that I would have an influx of people like me that didn't read a whole lot. And it turns out that that's not the majority, but it's not non-existent. So I always appreciate hearing from people that are in my shoes within this within this show's purview. So
yeah, absolutely. So very, very excited on the whole for what that looks like. Final little bit here. You can find us in all the...
Yeah, where to like reach out to us if you are a new reader, or if you're a very experienced reader and have comments or thoughts or ideas or anything. Ideas for cocktail names, which I mentioned at the top of the show. Crossan, do you have our handles?
Yeah, Words and Whiskey Show at gmail.com if you want to reach out to us directly via email. Words Whiskey Pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads if you're looking to reach out to us on any of those platforms. Yeah, we're available. Make sure you send us whatever notes. And if you're looking directly for our website and our schedule, again, wordsandwhiskey.show is where you'll find a lot of those links. You can also find all of our social media links directly on the website too if you're looking for them, just under the links page. It pops up like a little link tree. So you've got access to all the different things. You can also find us on patreon.com/wordsandwhiskey. We did just record a literal 2-hour bonus episode, almost 2-hour bonus episode, talking through and ranking all of the books that we've read so far in the show, which
generally
we'll
do time. Like 20-ish minutes before every episode. It's kind of our warm-up. It will field topics from listeners, from patrons specifically, because that's who that goes out to. Or we'll just something disconnected, but to get us sort of in the podcasting spirit. And we post that alongside the weekly episodes generally.
Yeah. And as PJ stated, gets us in the spirit. And then in addition, we have a thriving Discord community that you can join and be a part of as well, of whom partake in various things like read-alongs and everything that's going on underneath there. It's lively. It's great. Recommend it. So with that, we will see you next week.
Yay.
Yay. All right. See you later. Bye.
Bye.